Hi friends, Mrs. Weatherly here. I found another really fun book that teaches us more about frogs, and so I wanted to read it to you. And when I finished reading it to you, I have a super cool surprise. Okay, so wait until the end. So this book is called Frogs. It's by Gail Gibbons, and it is a book where we learn more really interesting facts about frogs. So it says, a breeze ripples the surface. The floating clump of eggs is called frog spawn. Frogs lay their eggs in water or wet places. Otherwise, the eggs could dry up and die. So remember, the first stage of the frog life cycle is the eggs, and in that art project, we created the eggs and they kind of look like that. These eggs do not have shells. They are inside jelly-like coverings. As they float, the jelly lets the sun's warmth come through to the eggs inside. Not all the eggs will survive. Most of the time, the large and slimy mass of eggs is too slippery and too big to be eaten. Just like we learned about before, it makes it look like a big creature so that predators don't want to eat it. This is nature's way of protecting them. Some of the smaller clusters of eggs will be eaten by creatures living in or near the pond, and it shows a fish eating a little bit of a smaller cluster of eggs. So fish do eat some of the frog eggs. So the dark centers of the eggs slowly grow into frog embryos. The embryos grow until they look like small tadpoles. Tadpoles are frog babies. So there's our second part of the frog life cycle, the tadpoles. As they grow, they feed off their own egg yolks. The tadpoles grow until they are big enough to break free into the water. It can take from 3 days to 3 weeks for this to happen, depending on what kind of frogs they will become. We hadn't learned that yet. 3 days to 3 weeks, depending on the type of frog. One by one, the tadpoles hatch from their eggs. They each have a head, tail, and body. The tadpoles wiggle their tails to swim. The tadpoles breathe by getting air from the water through feathery outside gills. As they swim, they eat very small plants that stick to larger water plants. These tiny plants are called algae. So that's another new fact that we didn't know. The tadpoles feed on algae. One week later, the tadpoles look different. They are bigger. Their gills begin to shrink. A flap of skin slowly grows over them. The tadpoles' mouths become hard with tiny teeth in their upper jaws. Now the tadpoles are 1 month old. Their outside gills have disappeared. New gills inside the tadpoles take oxygen from the water. Their tails are wider for stronger swimming. Something wonderful begins to happen. At the base of their tails, bulges appear. This is where their hind frog legs are growing. So they're starting the process of the third life cycle stage that we talked about for the frogs, and they're becoming froglets. At 2 months old, the tadpoles dart about the pond as they eat. They are still vegetarians. Can you say the word vegetarian? That's a big word. That means that they only eat plants. Now they have hind legs. Behind their head, bulges appear where their front legs are growing. Now I have a question for you. I remember when we learned about frogs from my science lesson earlier that we learned that frogs are meat eaters. But at this stage, it says they're vegetarians. They're plant eaters. So there must be some changes that occur from when they go from froglets to frogs with what they eat. Their tails become smaller. The tadpoles' gills inside their bodies are gone. They have grown lungs to use for breathing. Now and then they wiggle to the surface to breathe in air. Lungs are like what we have. That's what we use to breathe in air. The tadpoles are about 3 months old. Again, they look different. They have front legs. Their tails are even smaller. They have shed their tadpole skin and lips. At last, they have the wide mouths of a frog. See, it's starting to look a lot like a frog in that picture. It still has that tail. The tadpoles have become tiny frogs. They climb out of the pond and onto the land. Their tails were their tails will become smaller and smaller until they finally disappear. The tiny frogs begin to eat insects and worms. They aren't vegetarians anymore, so now they have become the meat eaters. So I was outside today with my sons. They were having lunch outside on this beautiful sunny day, and I caught something out of the corner of my eye. I saw something and I said, oh my goodness, what is that? Could it be a frog for my firsties to see? I found a frog, a real one. And so I captured it gently and put it in a little habitat just for the day so that I could save it to film it for you guys to see. So he or she is inside this little plant that I put in there. Can you see the frog? And I thought what I'd do is just let the frog kind of hop around in this container so that we could watch what a real frog looks like when they hop around. And maybe we'll even be lucky enough to see the frog use those suction cups on the bottoms of its feet to maybe even climb up the sides of the container. So let's see what happens. The frog is, oh, there we go. Look, the frog's gonna put on a little show for us and show us exactly in real life what a frog looks like when it uses its suction cups on the feet, like we learned about in my science lesson, to climb up things. Did you see how far that little frog jumped? It started right here on this plant, and it jumped all the way over here. That's far for a creature that's this teeny. And that's because of those long back legs that we learned about. Just like the rabbit from my science lesson with those long back legs, they have something in common, don't they? So the frog's just kind of hanging out on the side there, and that's usually what they do. They kind of sit very still in the wild, and what the frog is doing naturally is waiting for bugs to start landing around it so that it can catch its meal. I'm so glad we got to see it hop. That's so cool. So I only kept this frog for a couple hours in the plant so I could show it to you. And when we're finished here, I'm going to go ahead and let it go back in my yard so that it can live outside where it's supposed to live. I just wanted to show it to you because I have been searching and searching for a real frog or tadpole to show you guys during this lesson, and I was just so excited to happen to have found one today. Let's try to get a close-up so you can see maybe the frog's eyes or the wide mouth that we talked about a little bit in some of the books. I'll kind of point with this plant. So the frog's mouth starts way over here on the side of its eye there, kind of right near where my plant is, and it goes all the way around its head over here to the other eye. That's a huge mouth, and inside that mouth is that sticky tongue that we learned about in my science lesson that it will use. If it saw a bug land near it, it would quickly stick out that sticky tongue and get that insect to eat. So pretty neat. I was so excited to show you this frog, friends. I just couldn't wait, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about the frogs with the book that I read. I think it's a really good book. It's fun to read books that are pretend stories, and then it's fun to read books that are fact books and give us real information about different things in the world as well. So I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you soon. I'm going to go release this frog back into my yard so it can enjoy its life eating insects and hopping around in my yard. So friends, I will see you soon, and I hope you're doing well.